Welcome to the God is Not an Asshole podcast. If you are one of the many people done with religious dogmatism, hang on. You might sense transcendence, but your church or other faith community never seem to get off the ground. You realize that honoring your conscience means more than fitting in and keeping hard-to-explain rules? Hang on. You could probably think of the goodness in your tradition, and you tried your best to save that baby, but there's so much bathwater. Join your hosts, David Norman Moore Jr. in California and Kerry Connolly in New Jersey, who are collaborating to bring on guests who have found life on the other side of fundamentalism. Guests with stories of how they have liberated themselves from beliefs that divide us from each other. None of our guests' narratives are identical, but we hope you'll find something in common with each of them. We invite you to experience our common bond as we all inspire even more of us to embrace the true self.
Hey, everybody. Kerry and I are here with you for a different kind of episode of God is Not an Asshole, because we're going to talk about this amazing season 2. Kerry, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like these treasures keep getting dropped in our lap.
Indeed. It was some of the conversation we just had was pretty amazing. I can't wait to talk to some of these people that we have coming up. So do you want to get started? And
yeah, let's do it. I mean, folks, we have some people you might recognize and some you've never met, but once you hear from them, you will never forget. How about that?
Indeed. That was good. That was smooth.
Yeah. So, we're going to hear from Mac James, who I met Mac when he was 10 years old and I was around 30. I was a teacher at a Christian school and he was a student, and he has really come along in life. He's doing quite well. But he thought much of his life was traumatic, and it's so good to see him flourish the way that he is. He and his family live in New Zealand and have for quite some time. And, particularly the folks who know him or knew him, who grew up around him, will be so happy to hear, Mac's ongoing story. And, who are you thinking about, Kerry?
Well, I'm thinking about Lisa Alexander, who is a dear friend of mine and a colleague and an award-winning documentary filmmaker who is in the process of creating a film called My Father the Queen. And it hits all of the identities.
I've heard about that. Now that you mention it, I've heard.
Yeah.
I think isn't it being crowdfunded or something?
Yes, it's being crowdfunded, and I'm into that.
Yes.
She's got an amazing cast and crew, and she's just working on getting the funding now. So I think it's and it's a somewhat autobiographical film, and I think it's just going to be an incredible project. So I think you're going to love hearing from her.
Well, we are also going to be hearing from Mickey Morelli, who went to the same school as Mac James. For those who don't recognize Mac James, he went by Gene James when we knew him. But Mickey Morelli was also a student. She's just a little bit younger than Mac. And I asked her if she'd come on this show a few months ago, and she said, yes, it's time for me to tell my story. So I'm looking forward to that. I just love her so much. We've been connected over the years. Yeah.
That's great. We also have Elgin Bailey, who is one of the hosts or co-hosts of a podcast called the In the Black podcast. And he is an activist. I believe he is in the Philly area, but I could be wrong about that. But he is an activist for fair housing. And he is also deeply involved because of a personal story with police violence. And so he is just an incredible guy. And I had the pleasure of appearing on the In the Black podcast when my first book came out. And so I really think I think that's going to be a really great conversation. Really great conversation.
Yay.
Yeah.
And how about this? We're going to have Christina Cleveland.
I'm excited about that one. I'm really excited about that.
She wrote God is a Black Woman, and she she used to live here in town. She lived here when she was working on her PhD at UC Santa Barbara and attended church with us, and we grew together. We have continued to evolve in our inclusivity and, our compassion for all people, but particularly our resistance to white dominance in the world. We work at it in different ways, but I appreciate the fact that she's going to be joining us.
Yes. And I see Doug Paget on this list again. So I'm happy about that. Because Doug is the reason that you and I know each other. And he already appeared on this podcast and I could not be there that day. So I would love, and he's also the architect of my Master of Divinity. So he is part of the reason that I'm here in this world of seminary and theology and all of those things. And he's an author, activist. He drives around the country on a bus called Vote Common Good. And he's been arrested more times than anybody I know on the streets of the Supreme Court.
I just love Doug.
I know.
Interestingly, I found out maybe about a month ago from a woman who used to live out here on the West Coast, who now lives in North Carolina and continues to be a friend, that her daughter, now she has twin daughters, identical twins, but one of them is a same-sex loving woman in a relationship. And her pastor, this woman I'm talking about, the mother, the pastor recently told her to tell her daughter that God doesn't like that. And she was like, oh my goodness. Oh God. Anyway, the reason that she came to mind is because she is involved in the work that Doug Paget is doing in Minneapolis.
Oh, so, I love it.
Yeah, that's how small that world is.
That is. Well, I'm also putting another name down here that I haven't put on here because I'm going to I think I have a message from her officially scheduling her, but her name is Heather Lynn. She's a musician. She's got the most beautiful voice I've ever met or I've ever heard rather. And she is, she comes from the church world. So she has done a lot of deconstruction, has a lot of church trauma that she's been dealing with. And she's also in the process of writing a really interesting piece that I think we will have a great time talking about. She's just come out with a new album, which is the primary reason we want to have her on. But she's also a white woman who wears her hair in locks and has a really interesting story to tell around why that has come to be. And she's very much aware of the controversy around it. And so that might come up in our conversation as well. And I think it will be, I've learned a lot from her and she does it very thoughtfully. And so that's going to be a really interesting conversation, I think.
And you know who else we're going to have? Rob Schenck has agreed to come on the show. He appeared before Congress. He testified to Congress to renounce everything that all of his, right-wing evangelical work. He had, hundreds of employees doing lobbying in DC, and there's a movie out that kind of covers his family's story called Armor of Light. But what's big about this movie, and I think the book is even better, Armor of Light. But what happened is when he was involved in all of this gun rights, anti-abortion, right-wing stuff, he was approached in all sincerity by Abigail Disney, who wanted to do a film about him, a documentary. And she wasn't trying to change him. She just wanted to know, what made him tick. And in time, questions were raised. And he had to change. His life changed. And there's one scene, I don't think this is in the movie, but it's certainly in the book, because to me, it's the most memorable moment. He had been estranged from his teenage kids. And when the movie came out and they were watching, they were doing a viewing in their home with the family, his 14-year-old son walked up behind him and put his hand on his shoulder. And they hadn't touched in years. Wow. That's the power of this transformative story.
Wow.
So, Yeah.
I can't wait. Yeah. We've also got David Hayward, also known as the Naked Pastor. And I'm really looking forward to that. I've never met him, but I'm Facebook friends with him. So I see all of his stuff on there, and I'm really excited. He's got some amazing drawings that he does. So I'm excited to talk to him.
As you know, that I frequent the Maritimes, the east coast of Canada, and David lives about an hour away from where I go. So we have met, but before we met, and I encourage anybody who would to go online and buy his comic books. Before I met him, I was sitting with my friend Peter Fitch, who is also going to be a guest. At the same university, a prof at the same university where I teach. Peter had one of the comic books of David Hayward, and we sat there with our wine and laughed until there were no more tears to cry.
That's great. I love it.
Such a spoof of church.
Yes.
Church ridiculousness, church, dogmatism. And so highly recommend that.
Awesome. And then I'm also very excited to see Brian McLaren on here. I've had the pleasure of meeting him quite a few times. I don't think he'll ever remember me, but, I had the pleasure of meeting him, and he has just one of the kindest, most pastoral men I've ever met, like a true pastor's heart, and, very, very kind man. So and of course, a prolific author and voice of prophecy for the church. And I mean that in a prophet as in he speaks truth to the church,
Yeah. Brian's presence in the world is helpful for so many of us who, who have decolonized faith. What a gift he is.
Indeed. Did we get everyone?
Oh, no, there are more. How about Barb Parmet?
Oh, yes.
Who is Jewish, and she calls herself a recovered Zionist. And that's going to be something. Wow. Yeah. She overflows with so much compassion for peoples and with so much wisdom. And so I thank her for her advocacy of Palestinian peoples, because it means more coming from her than perhaps you and myself, Kerry.
Yes, exactly. Who else did we miss on our list?
Well, we have Veronica Ann Castañeda, who, she's a daughter of Mexican immigrants and grew up in poverty and earned 2 master's degrees at Fuller Theological Seminary. And she has gone through quite a bit of change as she has analyzed what she's been exposed to from her particular vantage point. And we also are going to have Samuel Kim. Samuel represents the Korean American Christian community in some of the ways that Veronica does the Mexican immigrant community. And then we have Matt Lowe. Matt is blind, and he is an advocate for persons with disabilities, a powerful voice for people with disabilities. But get this, he's a white-bodied human, as you would refer to him, but his thing is reparations for African Americans.
Love it.
That's what he does. I mean, when he was in university, his undergraduate degree was in Black Studies. I mean, this has been his thing. I mean,
love it.
But, when you hear that he has spent a lot of time in Oakland, California, it starts to make sense, right? I mean, the ground of Black Panther and all of that.
That's amazing. I love it. Okay. Is that everybody?
That's just about everybody. Oh, I need to mention Mitzi Smith. She's been dealing with health challenges. She had a series of mini strokes earlier this year. But this is how I need to tell you how I met Mitzi Smith. During lockdown, when all of our meetings were online, I don't know how I did this, but I ended up signing up for these meetings that were all women, all Black women.
Okay.
I don't know how I got in the room. They admitted me into the Zoom. I was the only male presence. We're talking like 200, 400 women from around the country who were processing the pandemic, the racism. And this is where I discovered her, because the other women tended to speak to her with a degree of reverence, like, Dr. Smith. And, when she spoke, I was just really moved. Every time I heard her speak, she is the first person to, she's a New Testament scholar.
Okay.
She earned her degree from Harvard, and she's the first African American woman to have that distinction.
Amazing.
Yeah, and boy, you know what? Every time I'm in touch with her, I'm amazed that she even talks to me. Yeah,
That's funny.
I would just that's the awe that I have for her. So
I can't wait. Well, we've got an amazing lineup for season 2, and the first episode will be dropping in just a few short weeks. And so that's really exciting. And I am looking forward to it.
Oh, and Kerry.
Yes.
Speaking of, I missed you missed the episode with Doug Padgett. I missed the episode with Zach Hunt.
That's right.
And right. that is so listenable. Everybody should listen to you and Zach Hunt. And I have to say that I think that the title of that episode is a little tame. It's God breathed, and it sounds like it could fit very well in, and maybe this is the aim, but it fits very well in the evangelical mindset, right?
Yes.
But in my mind, the title should have been one of the many questions you asked him. Or maybe the billboards that
the billboards. Yes. I don't want to give away too much from the episode, but the billboards that he took out in the heartland of the Bible Belt. It was classic. So that's definitely I think listen to it and read his book, because it was great. It was really good.
Yeah, the title is not clickbaity enough. So,
okay, I'll have to work on that.
All right.
That's funny.
Well, everybody, thank you. And Kerry, I'll see you soon.
I'll see you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you so much for being here today. We are people who have left behind performance-based religion and the shame that comes with it. Maybe you have a personal liberation story to tell, and we want to know about it. Please contact us on Twitter at GodIsNotAnAsshole, or text 805-703-8393, because the world needs to know that God is not an asshole.